Well, we have Hurricane Ernesto now north of Puerto Rico and making some headway toward Bermuda. Strengthening is expected, and it may become a major hurricane in the next 24 to 36 hours. So we'll be talking about that. And of course, we'll be taking a look at weather all across the United States tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is under the descriptor to this podcast. Use the coupon code SUMMER 2024. And if you do, you'll get 10% off. So, hi, everybody. I don't know where Joe Rayo is. So, he'll hopefully show up momentarily, probably having some trouble getting his computer going, or maybe he lost power. Don't know. So, oh, I see. Okay. Um, there you go. He's here. Yay. All right. He's here. Yay. Yeah, the little blue box that says the
Hold,
little
hold on for a
the little
second.
blue box that says
Hold on. There we go. I've been sitting here for 5 minutes now.
oh, that little blue box didn't pop up until like 5 seconds ago.
Oh, okay.
The admit you box.
Whatever.
Oh, you're here, so that's the important thing.
Yes, I am.
So here we go. It is what is it? Wednesday night. Okay, so tomorrow night we're going to shoot for 8:45 p.m. Eastern time for a start time, folks.
Ooh, a late
So,
night. That's almost
so
past my bedtime.
yeah, I hear you. What is your bedtime like? 1 a.m.
Actually, it used to be like 1 or 2 in the morning, but in recent weeks, I've been going to bed. I've been plopping down at about 11:30.
Oh
That's 90. That's
my
90 nights.
God,
That's
practically
90
at
night sleeping time for the dog. The dog has now gotten into this habit where I take him out one last time, and he knows that it's going to be the last time. Then he comes back in. I give him a couple of milk bones. I call that the nighty night cookie, and then he waits at the end of the hallway. We have a gate up, so he can't come running into the bedroom, beforehand. Open the gate. He goes charging down the hallway into the bedroom, jumps onto the bed, gets himself all nice and comfortable, but he will not go to sleep until the two of us, Bernard and I, are also in the bed. If one of us is not in the bed, or if both of us are not in the bed, he jumps off the bed and goes back out into the living room and says, "Hey guys, what's going on? It's time to go to bed." It's really weird.
yeah. Well, JJ gets on my bed until I get in the bed. Then once I'm in the bed, he gets off the bed and he goes in the other room. So,
No,
they all have their little
quirks.
quirks. Yeah, I guess that's the right word. Okay, so we've got an Ernesto, which brought some really heavy rains to Puerto Rico today. So that's now on the other side. It became a hurricane. Looks like it might
And
become a
also
major.
knocked out and also knocked out power to a large part of the island again.
Really?
I tell you, it's got to be so infuriating to live in Puerto Rico. Not that I've been to Puerto Rico a couple of times, a beautiful island, beautiful place, but now it's getting into the habit. Like almost every summer, you have to say to yourself, "When are we going to lose power? And how long are we going to be without power?" And once again, it has happened again with Ernesto. And this wasn't a Category 4 like Maria a few years ago. This was a Cat 1.
Wasn't even a cat one until it was moving away.
Yeah, yeah, but still, it knocked out power to tens of thousands of people in Puerto Rico, and now they face, having to, get everybody back up over the coming days ahead.
Well, yeah, clearly they have grid issues,
Yes.
and you know about grid issues where you are.
Don't even get me started.
All right, so well, since we're talking about Ernesto, let me get the satellite view up, and in the meantime, say hello to everybody on the chat board tonight on the Joe with Joe Weather Show podcast. Our usual schedules Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when we've got a storm lurking about, which we don't seem to have. Now, what happened to this? I just had it. Oh, okay. Now I understand. Hold on a second. Um, I put up my control thing for YouTube. There you go. So anyway, as I was saying, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us. Turn your notifications on, and of course, if you like the show, hit the like button. We're going to start again, just as I said earlier. Tomorrow's the start time will be 8:45 p.m. I have tomorrow's poker night, Joe. Just
Poker
so
night.
yes, it's poker night here in here in I have to go to Pixley to play poker. Uh, but anyway, uh, satellite presentation here is actually rather impressive. We've got a nice developing core, an exploding area of thunderstorms, which shows up really well on the enhancement, and you're getting the feathering of the high clouds to the north and northwest. But I do want to point out, if you go not that far northwest, this is the first upper trough that extends from uh, Atlantic Canada southwestward down to off the North Carolina coast. This cold front from a couple of days ago actually made it pretty far south, made it to me, for God's sake, and beyond. So those clouds are all moving pretty much from west to east. So that tells you right there that this ain't coming up the immediate eastern seaboard.
Well, yeah. I know I saw a couple of social media sites that were trying to allude to the possibility that there might be a chance that this might run up along the eastern seaboard. It will not. Right now, in the crosshairs of this storm, apparently is the island of Bermuda, and by then it may be close to Category 3. But Bermuda's used to this. I mean, like that's another island out there in the Atlantic Ocean that seems to, in recent years, constantly be getting hit. And the thing about Bermuda, Joe, as we've said this before, they could get hit with a Category 5, and like a week later, it looks like nothing has happened. It's I don't know what it is about Bermuda, but they're very storm. The storm readiness is on high for them, and they apparently are fairly used to these kind of things.
And it's a British island, and the Brits are they have a very stoic nature as a group, and when things break, they fix it. That's what they do. And yeah, there's been a number of instances where Bermuda in the last 20 or so years has been hit by uh, Category twos and Category three hurricanes, and you see the pictures immediately afterward, and you can see the damage, and you see your pictures a week later, and everything's been repaired.
Stan the man on the chat board, he's saying, Joe Rayo, how can you be so confident? Stan, let me just point out, I'm not going to speak for Joe. I'll speak for myself.
No, you can
Uh,
speak for me. We're on the same page.
I mean, myself and also for Joe, I mean, together we've had over 80 years of forecasting experience, but I've also said that we're really general practitioners in the field of meteorology. We rely heavily on those experts, and the experts we're relying on for the hurricane information are at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. And those experts, using all kinds of computer guidance and special models that are specific for hurricanes.
Well,
Uh,
let me put it up on the screen here. The hurricane tracking models. Do you see any of them with that? Do you see any tracks along the New Jersey coast, Stan the man? No, I don't. I don't see any.
I
Do
don't
you, Joe?
know. Now, admittedly, like 50 years ago, we might have looked at something like this and said, "Well, we're really gonna have to keep an eye on this because you don't know, you really don't know where the storm is going to go, and it could very well have an influence on the Atlantic coastline." But that was 50 years ago. We have advanced 50 years now, and we've got so much information available to us, and we know now. We know from literally tracking scores of hurricanes and tropical cyclones and inputting that into the various computer models and the technology that we have, we know that that storm is not going to come anywhere near the Atlantic coastline. Will it have an influence on places along the Atlantic coastline? Yes, it will produce very strong rip current and undertow activity, and this is not going to be the time for any
And some wave action.
wave action too. Swells. I mean, this is not going to be the time to go to the beach and jump deep into the water, even if you are a strong swimmer. But That having been said, if you're concerned about, cloud cover, heavy rains, strong possible damaging winds from this system, no, it's not going to happen. That's not going to be the case.
Correct. And Stan also asked, why is social media posting threats? Stan, I think that's a question that you really should not be directing to us, but you should be directing to the people who are posting those threats, because there's no chance that this is going to come up the eastern seaboard. Look, if there were a possibility that this was going to come closer to the coast, it wouldn't be turning northward; it'd be turning westward already if the upper air supported it, and it doesn't. And in fact, since we're on the subject, I'll bring it up. And it's a pretty easy thing to see here. We'll use the GFS. So this is this afternoon. Okay. So I'm going to draw the upper air wind direction, which would be the steering currents. Okay. So the last westerlies are not that far to the north to where the storm is, and the storm, Ernesto is just coming into view here on the lower right. So you've got all these westerly winds in the upper atmosphere, and we're looking at 18,000 feet. But those westerlies, those steering winds, are pretty dominant all the way through. Now, you tell me, how are you going to get this to come up the eastern seaboard with westerly winds that are lying just to the north of it? Um, it just can't. It's just can't happen. All right. Now, well, you might say, okay, well, what if those westerly winds go away? Well, they do go away to some extent. The trough but there's enough of this trough tomorrow afternoon to pull this thing northward and turn it northeastward. That trough pulls out. But at this point, the storm is south of Bermuda on the GFS. Actually, brings it right over it brings it. It goes south of Bermuda, then turns northward because the first trough pulls out. Now here comes the second trough, but that second trough is diving into the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states too far to the east. So all that does is really acts as a bit of a kicker here, and then turns it northeastward after it goes over Bermuda and moves it out to sea. And in fact, the GFS passes it pretty far south of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And then after a couple of runs where the hurricane tracking models actually, some of them, not all of them, but some of them brought it over Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, have now have all pushed away out to the east, and that probably makes the most sense. If that first upper trough had pulled out faster, maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But it didn't pull out faster, so we're not having that conversation.
Right, right, and that's why and that's why when you look at the Hurricane Center track, because of the uh, lateraling of one upper trough to the other, the storm Ernesto coming northward has that wobble, if you will. It's not coming straight north; it's wobbling a bit, first to the northwest, then to the northeast, or whatever. But that's all in the guidance models, and again, that's why we are very confident that this storm is not going to be anywhere near any landfall or possible landfall along the Atlantic coast in the coming days ahead.
I'm going to take a look and see if we got a recon there, which we do. And the pressure, I think they carry 989 on the advisory. So on the this new recon that just went in there is down to 982. So we've seen a drop of 7 millibars, and certainly looking at that satellite loop, you could see how the exploding convection near the core there. It's got a fairly solid core now. Uh, so the pressure's catching up to the thunderstorm development, because it started to look better organized even earlier this morning when it was still just south of Puerto Rico and going through the Virgin Islands. But sometimes you get the thunderstorms start to form, and then the wind and the pressure play catch up a little later on, and that's pretty much exactly. And David Schwartz says it was 981 as per NHC. So is that I'm assuming, David, that that's the 8 o'clock advisory, which I haven't seen. Yeah, 8 o'clock. It's at 22.4, 68.7. Top winds at 80 miles an hour, and it's moving along northwestward at about 16. Soon to turn northwestward and northward. And by the time we get to later tomorrow night, it's going to be northeast. Friday afternoon, they have it as a major hurricane south of Bermuda. then they weaken it a little bit, and that might be, that might be wishful thinking. We'll see. But the Hurricane Center track goes just, I mean, a hair west of Bermuda the center goes west of Bermuda, which means that they're going to be in the on the east side and likely experiencing some very very strong hurricane conditions over and winds over the island itself. I mean, that's just pretty much the way it looks, and then it just sort of accelerates out to the northeast. So. I think it's a pretty straight, it's fairly straightforward. There's nothing in the atmosphere that even remotely suggested that there could be a different outcome. So, as far as watches and warnings go, heat advisories in South Florida, heat advisories in the lower Mississippi Valley, and extending up northward into the Missouri River Valley and parts of the Central Plains. We have a severe thunderstorm watch in northeast Nebraska, northeast Kansas, southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northwest Missouri. Not a whole lot going on out in the western part of the United States. We've got some red flag warnings. I just want to see what these yellow boxes are. Um, I guess it's for severe weather, and we do have a few areas in the west that have air quality alerts due to the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality has issued an air pollution advisory. That's a new one. I've never seen that before. Uh, and this is due to wildfires burning in the region. So those wildfires are the Oregon Department Air Quality for Lake and Northern Calumet counties due to wildfires. The DEQ also expects intermittent smoke in eastern Douglas and Jackson County through this period. That goes till 3 p.m. Friday due to smoke from surrounding wildfires. So they're still getting wildfire issues, still dealing with wildfire issues out in the western part of the United States, which includes parts of the Sierra Nevadas here and a number of counties in the state of Nevada and on up into Oregon, as I just read to you. The U.S. satellite loop tonight. Not a really nice day overall up and down the eastern seaboard. The only thing is, Joe, up in upstate New York, because we got with this northwest flow, we keep getting these little upper troughs that have been coming through almost every day and setting off some showers and some scattered showers and thunderstorms in upstate New York. And we had a cluster form this afternoon that then we're moving southward, which is just not, it's not motion you often see, but it looks like most of those now have fallen apart.
Yeah, they have. There was one that sideswiped us, passed just off to the west of here in Putnam Valley, going from north to south. So we came close to getting some thundery weather today, but not quite. We heard some rumbles, but that was about it. I thank Alan Rupa. He says on the chat board, I wonder if Mr. Joe Rayo still has soft ground at his house like he did last year. I hope he is able to mow parts of his lawn this year. Alan, I am able to do it. We don't have the grounds, the soft grounds that we had last year. And in fact, I just did the lawn a few days ago on the tractor mower. And no, Stan the man, I don't hire a landscaper to do that job. I do it all by my lonesome. I got to tell you something, Joe. Since I moved up here to Putnam Valley, sorry if this doesn't include weather, but just a point of reference. I've been up here 22 years. First year I had a guy do it for me, do the lawn. Paid him $75 per every time he did it. Now today, if you got somebody to do the lawn for you, probably be about twice that much, at least. So 21 years ago, I invested and got a tractor mower, and I've done it every week of the summertime over those 21 some odd years. In fact, on the tractor mower, I can see that I have spent a total of 717 hours of my life on that mower. But when you think about it, multiply that, by let's say 125 or $150 per visit by somebody to do it for me over all of those years. That tractor has paid more than enough for itself over all of those years, which is why I do it and I don't pay somebody else to do it.
Let me ask you, Oliver, is it a deer?
It's a John Deere, yes.
It's a deer. Okay. David Scott hits super chat. Thank you for hitting the tip jar, David. So, despite the distance from Long Island, do you anticipate high surf and swells reaching the South Shore beaches over the weekend? I got to believe that there will be some swell, some swell action and rip currents.
Yeah, no question. A
Yeah.
category three or close to a category three storm located less than 1,000 miles away certainly will generate. I remember there was one storm many, many, many years ago, Gabrielle, and she was like a category four, and she was like over 1,000 miles, and she was causing all kinds of problems along the Jersey and South Shore of Long Island. So you figure on that
I
that
would I would just say I would just add to that, Dave. It's probably Sunday more so than Saturday. I'm
yeah.
thinking maybe Saturday they'll just be getting started, and then Sunday will probably and Monday will probably be a day of big waves and rip currents. I would with the system still turning up to the northeast.
It's the equivalent of a giant agitator out there in the ocean, or somebody who's spinning a giant egg beater, if you will, in the ocean. It's going to cause again swells, and you'll see that the weather services at Philadelphia and New York, they'll certainly be issuing high surf alerts and high sea and rough sea advisories. I'm sure, as Joe pointed out, as we get closer to the upcoming weekend.
All right, so let's go back to the radar, and you can see the clusters are just kind of dying off. Although there's one cluster in north and northwest Vermont where there's a severe thunderstorm warning, and another one in central Maine where it's producing a severe thunderstorm, and we have a severe thunderstorm warning there. But the rest of them have kind of fallen apart as they've moved to the south. The leftovers are now, a little bit of action there right along the New Jersey, New York state line into the northwest Jersey side and in northeastern Pennsylvania. But I imagine that's just a lot of dead clouds, and maybe if there's a little bit of light rain, that would probably be the gist of it. Was a little bit more action there a few hours ago. Just a couple of scattered showers across parts of Florida and coastal Georgia and also into parts of eastern North Carolina. There's nothing going on at all by me. We have some showers and a couple of thunderstorms in southern Mississippi down to the Mississippi and Alabama coastline. And then you get into some heavier weather up in the Dakotas, northwestern Minnesota, also in southern Wisconsin and northwestern Illinois. A train of severe thunderstorms moving through Kansas, central Kansas, and in around the Denver area, not in Denver itself so much, but to the northeast and north and northwest. We've got some showers and thunderstorms there that push up into clusters in Wyoming and in parts of Montana. The Storm Prediction Center has that whole area is in a marginal risk with a slight risk indicated in southeast Iowa, I'm sorry, southwest Iowa, southeast Nebraska, northeast Kansas, southeast northwest Missouri, and we've got that area covered right now under a new severe thunderstorm watch that was issued just about a half an hour ago. Oh, I'm sorry, an hour and a half ago, so it wasn't so new. And that is up until 2 a.m. Eastern, so 1 a.m. Central Time. Tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has a fairly large area of slight risk in Illinois, western Indiana, Missouri, and eastern Iowa. Tornado risk in that zone is at about 2%. And as we move on to day three, which is Friday into Saturday morning, we have a marginal risk up until Saturday morning into western PA, West Virginia, down the Appalachians to just about to me, in North Georgia, northern Alabama, Mississippi, then kind of thins out a bit. Northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, southernmost Kansas, and northeast Oklahoma, then in most of the Ohio Valley and the lower Eight Lakes covered in a marginal risk. I imagine we'll probably Saturday and Sunday with the next trough and the weather system that's coming in, that they'll probably have to put in. I'm thinking they're probably going to have a marginal risk of severe weather being indicated, at least on the initial forecast.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking of is that this weekend, and again, I've been hearing local forecasters saying, it's not going to be a washout. There'll be, it's not going to be raining all the time. Well, again, as I said yesterday, I think Saturday we may actually start with a bit of sun, dim sun early, but as the day wears on, there'll be an increasing threat of or a more widespread and frequent shower activity. I think Sunday, Joe, could very well be a washout. From my vantage point, it looks like most of the day we're going to be threatened by showers and yes, even some scattered thunderstorms as well. So that's one man's opinion, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
3/4 of an inch to an inch or an inch and a quarter. That's the WPC view for this weekend. And of course, with convective stuff, some local areas could certainly wind up with double that. We've got inch and a half plus areas up in north central New York. And then on the other side of the St. Lawrence River Valley, uh, the area in Canada there in blue uh, gets almost not quite to Montreal, showing areas of an inch and a half plus. We're seeing half to 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter down the Appalachians to about me. God, I hope it does rain. It's amazing here, Joe. You could go 2 to 3 weeks with not a drop of rain, and then you get 2 to 3 weeks where it rains almost every day. Maybe nonstop, not nonstop, but it's kind of how it works here. So things go from very dry to very wet in a hurry. And right now we're in one of those very dry phases. I've had to, I'm out there with my sprinkler going, moving it around the yard. Inch and a half areas in Illinois and Missouri and Iowa, also up into Wisconsin. Not a whole lot of activity out in the west, the northwest, half-inch areas. The area in central Utah, up and down the state, 1/4 to a half inch there. And otherwise, it's pretty much light precip across the plains and the rest of the Rockies. And as far as flash flooding is concerned tonight, it's all in northern, northeastern Arkansas, northwestward through Missouri into Iowa. That's where we have the marginal to slight risk, and then that marginal to area extends up into North and South Dakota, where we've got a slight risk being indicated in central North Dakota. So let's back to this upper air. These troughs are dropping into the east, and we've got ridging in the Rockies. Okay. So again, there's your first trough that came through arrived on Sunday, and it's taking its time. So you can thank that trough, which, by the way, Joe, um, a couple of folks that got into some of these scattered showers and storms that were running around the last couple of days, not so much yesterday, I think, but maybe the day before on Monday, the surface temperature dropped down to almost to 60 in uh, one of those downpours, because of the fact that the surface temperatures actually are not that far from average. They're pretty close to normal. But the air aloft is very cold. And this is the reason why that we saw this scattered activity with that upper trough that swung through on Monday. And then there's like a little ripple there in the flow that went through yesterday and today. Doesn't look like much of anything, though, for tomorrow. And then as that first trough pulls out, the next one is getting ready Friday night into the lakes and then over into the east on Saturday. And it's going to stick. Then the problem becomes until Ernesto gets out of the way, that trough can't go anywhere.
Yeah, it can't. And so and that also leads to the problem for the weekend. As somebody asked, you say, well, you're going for the all that wet weather over the weekend because of Ernesto. No, Ernesto is only indirectly associated with the bad weather for the weekend because, again, the slowing down of weather systems across the eastern United States and that trough, which is, as Joe has on the map there, it's what we call a positively tilted trough. It's going to swing like a pendulum, but slowly across the Atlantic seaboard over the course of Saturday, Sunday, and early next week. And that's what's going to lead to a prolonged threat of showery and thundery weather. And meanwhile, that huge ridge of high pressure in the western and central United States will not only keep it dry, but it also will keep it rather warm, if not downright hot, for places out west.
And by the way, that trough does not really get out of the way until like Wednesday. it finally, the southern part of it drops down into the southeast, and then finally you get more of a westerly flow developing across the Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic states. So we're probably going to have to be deal with have to we probably will be dealing with showers um, or shower risks for not only Saturday and Sunday, but probably for Monday and Tuesday as well. And then it looks like late next week, yet another trough drops down into the Northeast for what will Sunday the 25th, 26th or 7th. So it's not the last weekend in August, it's the next to last weekend in August. So we got another trough dropping down into the Northeast uh, for the weekend of the 24th, 25th. And after that pulls out, kind of looks like it may want to get a little warmish for the last days of the month of August. Maybe that'll be the last gasp of 90-degree temperatures in some places before before something else comes down from Canada and start off the month of September. Can't believe we're talking about the month of September, but you know what? It's middle August now, so why wouldn't we be?
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's before too long, Joe, we'll be singing jingle bells around here. Uh, Anyway, here's your next front in the east. You can see the action tonight and Thursday in the Minnesota down into Iowa. Some heavy rain there in northern Missouri. And then tomorrow the action is in Illinois and Indiana and Kentucky and up into Wisconsin. And then on Friday, in the up and down the Appalachians, back over into the northern lakes, and then on Saturday, because of that trough getting hung up to our west, we get into some showers and maybe some thunderstorms, and it looks like they'll probably be lingering or they'll be around on Sunday. Actually, you're right. They may get more numerous Sunday afternoon into Sunday night with the front getting very close but stalling. And
Right.
here we go again Monday. Another area of showers and storms on Monday, moving through, and then finally, no, actually Monday and Tuesday. So Monday, here's Tuesday morning. So the model does actually tries to improve things on Tuesday. Maybe enough of the trough will be stretched out to a point where the front gets pushed out offshore and we start to see improving weather conditions on Tuesday. But certainly through Monday, we're going to have to deal with uh, showers and storms, and then it dries out for much of the rest of next week. And then here comes the next trough for next weekend. We deal with that. And then the good thing about this is, though, with all these troughs coming into the east, is that we're going to get more of those. We're going to get more of those dew point days where the dew points are down in the 50s.
I agree. I think the next system that'll be moving all of this stuff out will come through on Tuesday and Wednesday. I have in my Facebook forecast lower humidity, less humid, and sunny to partly cloudy skies. So we may have to wait until next week, middle of next week, to see the weather, the nice weather return or the nice weather recycled, so to speak.
All right. Do you have Briller Jeopardy tonight?
I do.
Well,
Yes, I do.
let's have at it.
And
Let's
we
have
will
at it.
we'll get that. And
Oh, before we do, because poor Reuben Fairchild is all, he's got his panties all bunched up here. Um, he asks about uh, the fact that the number of heat waves, I guess he must have read something somewhere. I'm trying to find the exact um, way he phrased this. I'm scrolling back. Give me a minute. He heard something about, I don't know, maybe he heard this at the bar he hangs out with at. He heard something about heat waves now lasting twice as long as they did in the 1960s, which makes sense as they cut in half the criteria for a heat wave. So we've talked about this before, and in fact we did a
I found the message here. He says I heard something about heat waves now lasting two times longer than
right.
they did in the 60s. Makes sense since they cut in half the criteria for a heat wave. Aha. Rayo in comments, is this news? I don't
Well,
know. It's you know
every country uh, has a different way of counting heat waves and a different criteria. So here we talk about when temperatures get over 90 and everybody gets bent out of shape. But if you look at some of the European countries, where especially the northern European countries, it's when the temperature gets above 75, they call it a heat wave. So, there's a little bit of apples and oranges going on here as far as comparisons are concerned, but I don't think there's a whole lot of question that there's probably more heat waves now than there have been. Um, Once you square out all this noise with regards to what exactly is a heat wave and where the locations are. I mean, in here in Georgia, at highs of 90 degrees, that's not a heat wave. That's just summertime in Georgia. You know, if it's I don't know if it's highs in the upper 90s and low 100s, that's a different matter. Which I had a couple of days up in the mid 90s, but that didn't see anything higher than that.
Stan the man as what's the official National Weather Service definition of a heat wave? And again, depends upon what part of the country you're located in. In this part of the country, in our tri-state area, a heat wave is 3 or more days, consecutive days of 90-degree temperatures. And Reuben Fairchild pointing out that at one time, way back when, it wasn't three, it was 5 consecutive
And at one
days.
time in New York, and it wasn't that long ago, when we were younger, they didn't even call it a heat wave unless it got over 95.
Yeah, so I mean,
You had to have 3 days in a row of 95 plus.
it was a different society back then.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
anyway,
we played outside in those days when we were kids.
I have the uh, I have the Briller Jeopardy questions here once again. Average high temperatures in the month of August in these select cities, and the first select city is Honolulu.
Oh, I'm
Honolulu,
sorry, and we're doing August.
August. Yes.
Honolulu, what, 89?
Oh my dear, good lord! Right on the nose, Joe.
Well,
89.
it wasn't exactly that challenging. It was either 88 or 89, so I went 89. And a lot of the folks on the chat board are going 88 and 89. All right, so what's the next one?
Next one on the list is Houston or Houston.
Oh, I gotta think it's like 93 or 94. So I'll say 94.
Oh, Joe. Two in a row for Joe Chiaffi. 94 is correct. All right. You ready for number three?
Sure.
Lost Wages, Nevada. Lost.
Um, I'll I would think it's a triple digit number, so I'm gonna say 103, 104. I'll say 104.
Oh!
I should have went 103, right?
Oh, 103.
I almost did. I mean, three was on my tongue. I said, okay, I was debating at the last one to go which the higher or the lower number. I went with the higher, and I thought this one I might go with the lower one. So, uh, we're having a lot of fun here, folks, with some guessing them so close. Mike Waterhouse said 103.
Wah, wah, wah.
Right.
How about number four on the list here is Mary Tyler Moore's favorite city, Mary Richards' favorite, Minneapolis.
I'll say 82.
Oh, again, Joe. Oh, snake
Right.
country for you.
Wow. Well, Alan Rupa says 81.
And
And my
Alan,
and Mike and Anthony says 81, and Jason Fox says 81. So I'm guessing you were about to say it's 81.
there it is, 81. And here's one that's near and dear to Joe's heart because he actually was there for a short time. New Orleans, or New Orleans, as Bugs Bunny
Yeah,
would
New
say.
Orleans gets to 90 every day in the summertime, so it's like, but it doesn't go. It doesn't. It seldom gets much higher than 92 or three. So I'll say 92.
And again, Joe, if it were a snake, it would have
It would
bit
have
you.
bit me. So Northern Gray says 93, and Rich Rothmansky says 93. Jason Fox and Miss Fowler, I'd say 91.
And they're right, 91.
91.
And now we're going to do an international city,
Okay.
Toronto. Toronto.
Oh, see, now that they're not that they're northwest of Erie. They're east of Huron. Hmm. Oh, I mean, it gets warm up there. I'm gonna say 80.
That's warm, and it's much too warm,
It's much
actually.
too warm. Okay, yeah. Miss Fowlerite's at 78.
Still
So
on the warm side.
still much too warm. Uh, Rich Rothmansky's at double sevens,
WABC, still on the warm side.
and another
Vincent,
station that's gone.
you're in country with that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said Vincent Croce said 74, and he's in snake country.
And Alan Rupa, Frank Scalera, William Uber, and Mike Waterhouse at 75.
75 is correct.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. We went, my Renata and I, the first week of our honeymoon, we spent part of it in Toronto. And very funny, quickly, a very funny story was the time when we were driving to see the CN Tower, which at that time was the tallest freestanding structure in North America. You can't miss it. And we drove to a parking lot, Joe, and today the parking lot is where the Blue Jays play. But back then, when we were married, it was just a big, huge lot where they park cars. And so we're driving up, and here's this. You picture this. Here's this booth, and this guy obviously is there to take the money to get the to give out the tickets for the parking spaces in the lot. As we move toward the booth, I turn to Renata and I say, "Watch this." And we get up to the booth, and I say to the guy, "Excuse me, sir." Says my wife and I actually use this like southern accent or whatever. I said, "My wife and I are here in your fine city for the first time, and we're here to see the CN. Can you tell me where the CN Tower is?" And the CN Tower is like right in front of us, going way, way up into the sky. The guy, I wish I had a camera to take a picture of the guy's face when I said that. And all he could do was just look at me, and then he pointed to the CN. And I turned to him around and I said, "I told you, Martha. I told you that was the CN Tower. I knew it. Thank you very much, sir." And I gave the guy, like, the money, and he gave me the ticket back for the parking space. Drove the rented car into the parking space, stopped the car, and I told Renata, I said, "I just want you to get an idea." He said, we just got married just a couple of days earlier. I said, "I want to give you an idea of what you can expect for the next 40 years." Because that's all I'm going to dish out for. And sure enough,
Did,
in a couple of weeks on September the 1st, Mrs. Rayo and I will be married 40 years. We got to go back to Toronto
did you
just for
did you also direct him to the street where he could find the Wicked City woman?
Say, in that episode with Tennessee Ernie Ford, that I Love
Yes.
Lucy, does Desi Arnaz as Ricky Ricardo, does he refer to Ernie as Ernesto?
At one point, yes, he does. I think he does.
Ernesto! Ernesto!
Exactly. Exactly. Um, all right, we're gonna end the show tonight. I know we always usually end it with um, the Tempest by Weather Flow, but I'm gonna do a little something different, and hopefully I won't get into much trouble for this. So keep your fingers crossed. So I no, I know you can't, you may not be able to hear it, uh, but I found some of the old News Radio 88 jingles.
Yes.
So I'm just going to play a couple of them, okay? And I think everybody should be able to hear it. So if somebody on the chat board could just let me know that you're hearing it. This was a way they ran these. It was part of their day to day, and it was a promotional campaign, and they had these jingles that they would run, and they ran them for a couple of years. And this is, I'm doing this because if you weren't here last night, WCBS in New York, which which is an all news radio station for the last 58 years, is going off the air at the August 26th, and it's And I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. I can't. I never expected. First of all, it was something that came totally out of the blue, and it's been a really emotional thing for me. And I've been reading, from other people's posts on other Facebook pages where they've, been posting about this. I'm glad I'm not alone because apparently it's hitting a lot of people hard. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, this station had a huge impact on and they did quality. You know what the thing is, Joe? It wasn't. I'm not denigrating 1010 wins because they that's a whole. Their format is their format is different for all news. It's sort of headlines and 22. We'll give you 22. Do they still say that? You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world. Okay, so it's more headline driven, uh, whereas WCBS was more in depth, and you also got to know the anchors to a large extent in morning drive, particularly morning drive, and in evening drive with traffic and then weather and so on. But anyway, I found these jingles and I remember these growing up. So I'm just going to play a couple of them. So just let me know if you guys can hear them.
News is
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
And I'm Jim Donnelly.
money is
Today's top business news. I'm Gordon Williams.
how to get you in and out of town is
From the News 88 Chamber, this is Neil Bush.
no matter where the news is made, we're here to tell it best.
WCBS New York.
WCBS
Oh,
New
okay.
York. News is
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
And I'm Jim Donnelly.
Turn it down, Joe.
is
That's my field, and I'm Ed Ingalls.
where it's at and where it's gonna be is
This is Art Athens at the news desk.
no matter where the news is made, we're here to tell it best.
WCBS New York.
WCBS New York.
Well, I just had, I had to play them because I've been playing them all day. I actually made a ringtone from my phone. I had to play them because I've been playing them all. There you go. Um, I had to play them because I made a ringtone for my phone out of those. So, yeah, I just
you should tell people, Joe, you actually did the weather on News Radio 88. For one
once,
day, but you actually did the weather for News Radio 88
right,
once.
once, I did do it, and it was, when you're young. I mean, I don't even remember how old I was when I was on News Radio 88.
What was the day after? It was the day after that they let out Dr. Bob Harris, who was on CBS, and
So I must have been 1979. So I'm going to say I was 20 because they must have been calling. I think they were calling in the weather service to get somebody on the phone,
right,
to do
and
something.
they said,
And
and they said, put Chaffee on.
I did. That was my one and only time. But it was such uh, I mean, God, it was just amazing. It was such a thrill to be on News Radio 88, WCBS, New York. And I was thinking about this today, Joe. Um, okay, this is not just some radio station, okay? This is CBS. This was Bill Paley in the late 1920s that formed CBS. And, it started with CBS radio before television became mainstream, and that happened like 15 years, 20 years later. But I mean, this is CBS radio. This was a big deal. This particular station. This station has a ton of history, and the whole CBS radio network, of which it was part of. It was an owned and operated station by CBS until um, eventually Viacom acquired CBS. The radio stations were sold off, and they kept, obviously they kept the call letters, but they were no longer part of CBS. This is huge. This is a really, and certainly for people like you and I who have worked in radio and have worked in television and are very much aware and sensitive to uh, the history of both radio and television, that it's a horrible thing. It's awful. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I really feel like a friend of mine died.
Right. It's going to be very sad listening, to the final days. I remember other iconic stations, WNBC here in New York, WNEW, which was my mother's favorite radio station with Ted Brown and Gene Clavin and uh, you know, that William B. Williams. That was tough to take, and this is going to be another bitter pill to realize that this station is going bye bye on August 26th.
And Alan Rupa says he's got the CBS News ringtone, the old CBS Radio top of the hour news ringtone, which is really cool. And of course, Rich Rothmansky, who's on the chat board almost every day. I mean, you work there, so I mean, this has got to be tearing you apart. I mean, I just I'm beyond words with some of this stuff, Joe. It's very very emotional for me, and I only did one, and I didn't even work there. I only did it once. You never did it?
I was periodically on WCBS because of Wayne Cabot. Wayne Cabot would call whenever there was an astronomical event like a comet or a meteor shower or an eclipse, and so I made more than my fair share of appearances on CBS. Doing an interview about an upcoming celestial event. So in a way, I guess you could say I was like you, Joe, a very small part of CBS. I did my time on CBS in bits and pieces, but and I was happy. I was happy that I was able to do that. So, and I think about all those great people who are going to be gone. Such as Wayne Cabot and all these people who we've listened to over the years. Bridget Quinn. I mean, and we're not going to be able to hear the World News Roundup anymore. One of the longest network radio newscasts, and that's going to go bye-bye as well, unless you try to tune in a CBS affiliate out of town that runs that. So
Yeah, yeah, it's awful. So, we're going to say tonight. We're going to say good night. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 8:45, and I'm going to run one more jingle, one more time. Okay. So we'll see you tomorrow.
WCBS New York.
WCBS New York. All news.
WCBS New York.
Morning news.